My name is Monk Rowe for the Phillies Jazz Archive. Very pleased to have Mark Soskin with me this morning, keyboardist and jazz educator and recording artist. And we chatted before we sort of rolled tape here. And you have a positive outlook on your career in general. And a career
I
in
do.
jazz, yeah, it seems to be challenging, but you seem to have done all right.
Oh, I have. I mean, besides Sonny Rollins, I played with, well, Stanley Turrentine, Billy Cobham, a bunch of people. And I saw that on one of your shows, you had Orrin Keepnews, right? And Orrin was my first producer on my first record. Okay, so one thing led to another. I mean, first what happened was that uh, I I was scheduled to play with the CBS All Stars, a group called the CBS All Stars, and they were all stars, and I wasn't. And so I went up to Bruce Lundvall, then the head of Columbia Records. I said, "Hey, Bruce, they're all stars, and I'm not. So what are we going to do?" And right there, he said, "Well, why don't you go in and do a demo? Put down the money." And I did a demo, and it got rejected from Columbia, but I went to Orrin Keepnews and I got hired on the spot, and that was it. That was the start of my career,
Was that
recording career.
was that Fantasy Records?
That was fantasy.
Yeah,
Yeah, the record came out on Prestige, and that was a little subsidiary of fantasy.
right. Well,
And
he must have Oren must have recognized something in you that he liked right away, and also he might have sensed there's some longevity here.
yes, um, but it was only one record. I was scheduled to do another record, but and I had all the musicians. I had the compositions, but that never happened for some reason or another. Um, but look, I'm still recording. I've done four CDs for Steeplechase. Here's one of them.
Uh-huh.
This is my last record. It's called Ballad for a Rainy Afternoon, and I'm still working on. I still compose like crazy. I do a lot of composing. And
Excellent.
tonight at
We're
my
gonna talk about that. I
yeah,
have some questions about that. I wanted to go back a little bit to the early '70s,
yeah,
and from what I read about you, you were studying classical music, but attracted to jazz. And when I think of the early '70s, I mean, jazz fusion and jazz rock was in full bloom.
yes, it was.
So I'm wondering, the jazz that you were attracted to and maybe pulled you away from classical, uh, was it jazz fusion or was it more like the masters, the
Yeah, it was more of the masters. Jazz. The only reason I'm associated with jazz fusion was because of Billy Cobham, and at that time, Billy Cobham was very popular, and so we used to, tour a lot. And but I was really into, I don't know, Sonny Rollins. you know, that's what I really like to do. So, you know, I went from there to playing with Sonny.
how would you were gosh, you would have been your early 20s.
Well, this we're talking about like 1977, 78.
Okay.
Yes,
So
my early 20s.
yeah, were you thinking to yourself, questioning whether you were in over your head?
Never.
Good for you.
Nope, nope, nope. I always knew what I was doing, and hopefully still do.
Well, it's so interesting. I had quite a number of Sonny Rollins records, and I just yesterday watched watched a good deal of the video saxophone Colossus.
Great, great.
That I
That's that's the one where he jumps off the.
yes,
I was there.
you were there. And did you know he hurt himself?
Well, what happened was that we're playing, and all of a sudden he jumps off the thing, and we had no idea what's going on, and and we were laughing, and then when we at the end they said there's not going to be an encore. We have to take Sonny away, and he broke his heel.
Yeah. I was I was fascinated by that. He's doing his thing where, he's playing solo, and in this one section he goes from Give Me a Kiss to Build a Dream On to something from the Peer Gynt Suite to the Flying Young Man on the Flying Trapeze or whatever.
That's the thing. Right before he did that, he quoted the Man on the Flying Trapeze,
Okay.
and that's what happened. And then he jumped.
So as a musician myself, I sometimes wonder, I'm not sure that you or your bandmates at that time would have admitted it, but did you ever feel like, Mr. Rollins, we've been sitting here for a long time and we haven't been playing anything. Could we play now?
Well, I mean, he was always playing, and we knew what to get into. If he'd start something, we'd get into it. Like if he started whatever, My One and Only Love or something like that, we'd pick up on that.
Okay, so you were waiting. He's doing his thing. He's quoting these songs, and at some point, he starts playing a song in a fashion that it's your job because you've been paying attention. Now we join in.
That's right. Yep.
Um,
And I'm currently at this is another thing. Currently, when I'm teaching now at Manhattan School of Music, which I started yesterday, by the way. Today I'm doing another class in improvisation. But when I was doing this yesterday, this is the music of Sonny Rollins. This is the band, and I brought all the music because I still have all his music
oh,
that I've kept, and it's in his handwriting, and the students just love that.
I'll
And
bet.
we came up with a set list, and now we're getting into the tunes.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean,
Really awesome.
that's pulling real life experience into the classroom, which I think is so important.
Absolutely. Oh
You know.
yeah. I mean, look, we're talking about Sonny Rollins. He's like one of the last ones like this alive.
Hmm.
And and to see the music from in his handwriting, that's something special.
Yeah, you hold on to that.
I am holding on to it. I have it right here. I mean, I got tons of it. And he'd send me even letters. Letters that he wrote. I still have that too, and I showed it to my students.
Hmm.
And that's, what can you say?
Did he tell you or suggest things about your playing that he wanted you to do, or did he leave you to your
Okay.
own devices?
What he liked was simple chords, not really substitute chords or anything like that. He just wanted the basic thing. And when I would solo, that was up to me. But so when I play, it was just the basics, and we took it from there.
I wonder if you, uh, when you're backing him up or other horn players,
Right?
do you ever lay out like on purpose?
Yes. Well, sometimes. I mean, tonight I'm playing with amazing tenor saxophone player Rich Perry, and we're doing all my music, and so sometimes I'll lay out, but we're doing my music, so it's got to be, you know,
Yeah.
together.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to be in. I'll tell you the reason I asked that question. I very much enjoyed your recording on Walk Tall.
Oh, Walk Tall.
Yeah.
That was my first record.
And there's a point there, the band is like it's so funky, and
Yeah,
then there's a point where you're soloing with only the drums.
right, exactly.
And I love that because it's like a different sound, a different texture, and then when the bass and etc. come back in, it's like, oh yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, that was, yeah, that was how I wanted it. That was pretty much it. And to this day, I mean, I enjoy that kind of playing, where I'm just soloing with one other person.
Mhm.
And I still love to do that.
Why do you think your I'm looking at your list from your website as a sideman, which
Oh,
which runs close to 100 and probably more than that now.
yeah.
So
Well, say that again. My
I,
wife was getting,
your list of sidemen. Okay,
there
nice.
it is. Walk Tall.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's right. I mean, for this record, I specifically, I mean, because Oren said, he said basically get who you want. And I wanted at the time Benny Maupin, Harvey Mason, it was Herbie's band. And and so I got these guys, and that was, it was great. And Walk Tall, that was that.
Why do you think people? I mean, your list of recordings as a sideman, for one thing, is close to 100, or maybe over that by now.
Probably more.
Yeah. How come you get all those calls? If you think about yourself as a player and as a participant, do you know why people call you so often?
I do. And that's because I can do a lot of different things, you know, um, a lot of different kinds of music I can do. And I tell that to my students. I mean, the more you could do, the more work you're going to get.
Have you had students who have had a chance to play like club dates or weddings or something, and they have an attitude about it? They sort of turn up their nose at, oh, gee.
Well, that's not good. I mean, if you have that attitude, you're really gonna you miss out on a lot of stuff because you got to be open to
Hmm.
different kinds of music, and that's one of the reasons I've worked so much.
What about the non-musical parts of the music business? How do you teach your students the importance of things like punctuality and attitude?
Well, that comes into the picture, not maybe not right away, but I will get to it with them,
Hmm.
you know, and that's a definitely an important thing. And one of the things why I kept a gig with Sonny was punctuality. I mean, if he's leaving to go to the gig from the hotel, you better be down there because if you're not, you're fired.
He always struck me as, oh gosh, I'm not sure how to put this, a little mysterious, like
Yes.
he was a sage, and he knew things that most of us don't.
Yeah, he knew what he knew what he wanted, and he knew what he wanted out of the musicians. And one of the things that I brought up to my students yesterday in my class was that if you didn't know calypso music, especially a drummer, forget about it. You weren't hired. Period.
Especially, what did you say?
Especially drummers.
Oh, drummers. Yeah, okay.
They couldn't play calypso music.
Hmm.
Get it. Forget about it.
Yeah,
He
because that was.
he had to have calypso music because we always did calypsos. I mean, that was kind of our theme song was "Don't Stop the Carnival"
Hmm.
from the record "Don't Stop the Carnival." That was the first record that I did with Sonny, and that was with Tony Williams and Donald Byrd.
Uh-huh.
And so It's important thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your composing a little bit. Where do your ideas come from?
Well, that's a good question. Where do my ideas? It's really tricky. I just sit down at the piano and come up with something, and hopefully I don't throw it away because I like to keep the idea fresh. And when once I have that idea, then I could build on it. Like I have this tune called "Man Behind the Curtain," and yeah, "Man Behind the Curtain," and that's like a specific idea, and it's in 3/4, and so I build on that, you know, um, and so it's really funny how that happens.
When you have a tune that you've started, and then okay, business calls, you've got to go teach a class, you've got to go play a gig. Does that tune rattle around in your head until you can come back to it?
Yes, it does, and eventually I'll get there.
At what point do you name things?
That's another interesting question. Um, I really don't know. I mean, one thing, I have a tune called "Throwing Caution to the Wind," and that speaks for itself. The title, it's like throwing caution to the wind. So you're just letting it happen, taking chances.
Do you feel that the song reflects that in its music? Is
I
it
do.
like adventurous sort of?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
That's kind of feel. If I was playing it now, you'd hear it.
I've often wondered. You read a lot when people write about jazz, not necessarily musicians writing about jazz, that improvising is just playing what you feel. And I've often wondered if a professional musician such as yourself, if you had a really bad day and you had a lot of concerns on your mind, but you had to go play a gig,
Right?
do you think you would play differently than if you had had a terrific day? Does your state of mind affect your improvising?
No, I'll say that. No, it's just if I feel like warmed up and ready to do the music, because I've been practicing for this gig for quite some time, and I feel like I'm just ready to do it. Now I really tonight I'm just going to play. There's no thinking involved. It's like you think for a little bit and then you forget about your thinking. You know, it's like you just play.
I'd like to pursue that thinking business a little bit
Hmm.
because as a player myself, I find that I have to do a certain amount of thinking if I'm playing a song that has some significant chord changes to it. Like
Yes.
I have to make the changes, and
Uh huh.
so but people like yourself, they're saying, well, you should be beyond that. You should be have absorbed it.
Well, yeah, but you know what? It always changes when you're practicing to say when you're playing with the group. You know, so it's really different practicing by yourself than playing with a band. It's different.
That's very true.
And so I'll work on, say I'm doing a modal tune, I'll work on, playing in a modal where there's a modal chord, say we're D Phrygian or something like that. Then I'll work on Phrygian mode and play through it until I really get that under my belt, so to speak.
what does playing through it mean to you? Like, obviously, you're not going to stick with the notes particular to the G Phrygian scale. You're going to go other places.
Yes,
And do you have a list of places that you can go in your head?
yes, I do.
Could I
And
have it, please?
well, I mean, you know, s- I mean, I'll play like approach notes, say things that get me to a certain place, but it's not so cut and dry. It's you got really have to play on it and see what you get out of it. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. If you were playing for your students, maybe in a private lesson or something, you were sort of demonstrating that, and a student said, "Well, Mr. Soskin, that note you played right there, why isn't that a mistake? You're playing in a certain key, and you played that note. Like, how come you can get away with that?"
Because you have to make it right. You have to make the wrong note sound right. You have to convince the person or people that this is the right thing to play.
Hmm.
It works on this chord. You know, and
Okay.
I'll have to do that tonight. I'll have to make it work.
I've I've noticed that a lot, not a lot, but frequently with, for instance, Miles Davis, that he'll play, especially like at the ends of phrases. He'll choose a note or play a note that, boy, I wish I could think of something like that, but I'm not sure I would dare play it.
Yeah, well, try to do it. Find out. I mean, if you want to create music, it's taking risks, and that risk taking is often what makes the thing happen.
Hmm.
Just throwing caution to the wind again.
Have you ever had a circumstance where a sideman on your gig, your music, and they're throwing caution to the wind? And have you ever thought like they're going a little too far with your music?
Well, not really, because I'm always choosing musicians who I know will take care of business.
Okay.
I always know that they're going to do what I like them to do. Say Jay Anderson, for one, the bass player. I get him because I know what he's going to do. I know kind of the way he plays, and I know the way Matt Wilson plays, and I know how Rich Perry plays. So I know what they're going to do.
Oh, Matt Wilson. Yeah, he's
He's
marvelous.
on a few of my records.
Mm-hmm. What's it
Um,
What's it like now to land a gig in a New York City club?
what is it like now?
What's is it a chore? Is it there's a lot of competition for these things?
No, I mean not for me.
Okay.
I mean I usually all I have to do these days. Hey, I played with Sonny Rollins. I get the gig right away. Everybody knows Sonny Rollins,
Nice.
and that's it. So so this really, I mean the reason I got this teaching gig doing the music of Sonny Rollins because I played with him,
Hmm.
and I wouldn't have gotten the gig. I don't think if I didn't play with him.
How has the business changed? You've been a professional musician for
Long time.
a long time, and you've been in a couple cities, but mostly in New York for a long time.
Yep.
How has the business changed for you and your bandmates?
Well, um, How's the business changed?
Well, is there like if you got, if you went to a bar to hang out with fellows you've known for a long time, do you engage in the good old days? Gee, remember when we could do this and now that's gone? Those kind of conversations.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it is gone in a way, you know, um, but it still doesn't really affect me playing at places. Um, but the business has changed. It definitely has changed.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I don't think anybody could just go out there and get a record date, you know, but somehow I've managed to do that.
The days of like I'm fond of the Cannonball Adderley story where he shows up in New York and sits in with Oscar Pettiford, and
Uh
next thing you know, he's got a record contract.
huh.
Like,
I mean, because I played with Sonny Rollins, that's a good reason why I got a record contract.
do you have advice for your students about how to make their way in the business now?
Yeah. Uh, go to clubs, sit in with people. You know, I mean, like tonight, after I play, there's going to be a jam session there at Smalls. And I say, go down to the club and make yourself known. Let other people hear what you do. And so maybe, you know, if the club owner is there, he could hear what you do. And hopefully you'll be working at the club.
So, in order for them to make a good showing, do you tell them you better know this list of tunes?
Yes. Well, repertoire is definitely important. So I mean, look, Sonny knew so many tunes, you know, ridiculous. He knew so many tunes, not only knew the tunes, but knew them in several keys.
Oh.
So I would tell people, learn the tunes and learn them in several different keys. Um, and that's very important to do.
Have you ever had a student go to one of those things and come in the next day and say, "Oh, I really blew it"?
Um, that can happen. That can definitely happen. I mean, look, when I first got the call to do Sonny's, come down to Fantasy Records and do this audition, it was called. When I got to the studio, 12 midnight, there was nobody there except Oren and Sonny. That's it. What am I going to do? I have to play. You know, this is like I could get the gig. So you know, you really have to just make the most of it. You know, and I knew at the time that this is a big thing. And so when I went to do the audition, I didn't know every tune that Sonny called, but I knew a lot of them.
Okay.
I knew enough of them to get me the gig. And right after I auditioned, Sonny goes, "Okay, you got the gig, and we're gonna rehearse in a day or so." And that's that. So right away I was thrown into Tony Williams on one side and Sonny Rollins on the other, and throw in Donald Byrd in there. And so I had to be ready for this, you know. I mean, I was a lot younger then, you know, and I really had to take care of business immediately.
Yeah. Well, speaking taking care of business, I mean, this may sound like a, of course not question, but would it occurred to you at that moment where Sonny said, "Okay, you got the gig"? At what point do you ask about money?
Ah, okay. Well, you know what? I never asked about money because I just always figured it would be okay. And, it was okay. And look, Sonny, at one point, you know, he was going to go out and do a world tour. Okay. And we rehearsed one time, and then it all got canceled. And that was the last time he played, and that was the last time I played with him. But you know what? He paid me for the missing. He paid me a good amount of money to you missed the gig. It was canceled. Here's the money.
That's
So
yeah.
he's a mensch.
That's very classy.
Very.
Because you would set aside those dates and
Yep.
probably turn down other work and
did that.
yeah.
But when he called, you had to be there. That was it. And so there was no question about that.
Have you had people, maybe Sonny Rollins, other people that taught you life lessons as well as musical lessons?
Well, the life lessons were don't mess up. Don't get drunk on the gig or whatever. Just yeah. I mean, just do what you do and do it the best you can do it.
Uh-huh. Tell me about playing with Herbie Mann, if you don't mind. He was a
Yeah.
favorite of mine back then.
I played a lot with Herbie, and yeah, at one time I was playing with Herbie, Stanley Turrentine, and Sonny at the same time, and so it was great. I loved it. Mainly with Herbie, it was playing Brazilian music, and that's pretty much what we did. Brazilian music. I mean, Stanley, completely different. It was like about, yep. Well, I remember Stanley used to do My Romance. That was like his big tune that he used to do. And the sound that he had was so great. It was just heavenly.
Heavenly. You probably played Sugar a few times.
I played Sugar, yes. That was a must do.
Yes.
So, if you're playing with somebody like that, there's certain things you really need to know.
Did you find that you played in different parts of the piano behind a flute player as opposed to a tenor sax player?
Definitely. Oh, for sure. Now, if you're playing behind a flute player, you got to play pretty soft. So, you got to be aware of that, the dynamics. And I just did it.
What about playing behind singers?
Very important. And that I still do. I still I'm like the musical director for Rosanna Vitro. And there was one record we did, the music of Randy Newman, and that was nominated for Grammy. And so playing behind a singer is something very specific. You can't get in the way of the singer, of the vocal. And you got to know what to do with that.
Yeah, that's a whole other class in itself. You could have a vocal accompaniment class, it seems to me.
Yes, it's a whole art form. It's an art form to play behind a singer. Yep.
I find it's tricky when you're playing behind a singer and all you have are chord charts.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what the melody is, how are you going to keep out of the way of the melody unless you know it?
Well, hopefully the vocalist will write in the chart the melody. So, that's very, very important.
Yeah. Have you ever had a singer, say, well, can I sing with you? And you go, sure. And they'll mention a song and you go, what key? And they go, well, my first note is,
Well, hopefully I'll grab it from that. I mean, not all the time does that happen, but
no.
it can happen.
It
Good
seems.
question.
I wonder if we're at a point with jazz education at the academic academic level has been around long enough that sometimes we have professors who didn't have the opportunity to actually play a lot of gigs,
Yeah,
and you're bringing that as part of your a huge part of your resume. So I don't really have a question here except that to acknowledge that I think it's really important
what is important?
that you have real life knowledge
I mean,
of yeah, playing gigs and dealing with singers and everything
dealing
we've
with
been talking
everything.
about.
Yeah, dealing with the whole picture. Um, yeah, I've been fortunate. I've been lucky enough, and and I've worked very hard at this. Like well, I've had the opportunity to play with some great people, and I've taken advantage of it.
Can you describe to me if I looked? I'm looking at your sideman list right now, and I'll pick like okay, Jimmy Ponder.
Jimmy Ponder. Okay, great.
So you
Oh,
get
that's a
you
good
get a
one.
call to
Yeah.
tell me how that whole thing works.
Okay. So I got a call from who did I get? Well, I got a call from it was the bass player, I think, on on that record or something like that. And he said, "Yeah, I got this record date coming up, and it's for Jimmy Ponder. You want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'd love to do it. I know Jimmy Ponder's music." And so then what I did, I started checking out Jimmy's music and trying to see what I could do with it. I remember we did on that record date, The Creator Has a Master Plan. And that's really not a typical tune you would do. But I knew about it enough where I could do something with it. And that was great. I believe the bass player on that record was Peter Washington, I think. And and the drummer was the guy who played on Song for My Father,
Oh,
the drummer from that record.
I should know this. I'm not passing the audition at the moment.
Uh-huh. But anyway, it was that drummer. So it was a nice band.
I just heard that recording, by the way, on my whatever delivery system I have, Pandora or something, and I
Uh-huh.
heard his version of that. So I was just listening to you a couple days ago.
Oh,
And
really?
when you have a tune like that, that's long, lengthy vamps, and the harmonic material is, let's say, limited, um, how, how do you expand on that without uh, you have to keep the music in mind and respect the composition.
Yep, definitely.
So
And
how do you build on those those vamping two vamping chords?
yeah, well, I think it was in C minor. And with the voicings, you'd play certain voicings when it came to it, maybe fourth voicings. And and then for soloing, you know, C minor, all, all the melodic, all the minor chords you use,
Hmm.
the scales, all of that, and that has to do with improvising. That's pretty much what I'm going to do today when I teach this class is what scales go with the chords, and you have to know those chords. You have to know those scales. So I've I've done that. I've done that work.
Have you ever had a date, recording date, where you were accompanying a singer or a soloist who was not even there. In other words, you're laying down accompaniment for somebody to put something over it later.
Like an overdub.
Correct.
And what's your question?
My question is, if I wonder if you've ever been in that situation, like you're comping, but you don't know what's going to go over the top of this.
Right.
So it's kind of an odd feeling that I can't respond to the soloist or the singer because they're going to do this later.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, usually when I do a record date, it's really not so much about that.
Okay.
It's not so much about overdubbing.
All
It's
right.
live. We're all playing live, and I know what to do.
Okay. Are you able to keep track pretty well of your business dealings? Like, have you ever had a circumstance where, gee, I played that record date like 6 months ago, and I haven't received anything for it? Are you on top of that kind of thing in your career?
Received anything?
Like you didn't get paid.
Oh,
Have you
that's
ever had?
not getting paid is always not good. And I always keep that stuff in mind.
Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, and and usually that's done well in advance, you know. So like I'll know what I'm going to get paid, and I know what everybody else is going to get,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
Okay.
now I'm doing this gig at Smalls. I know how much they're going to get paid,
Okay.
and when I'm at the gig, here's what you're going to get. Boom, and I pay them, and they say that usually they're very happy with what I pay them,
Yeah.
and that's something else, you know. You to have a band, you're expected to really pay pretty well,
Hmm.
you know, and usually it works. I mean, with Sonny, he's always paid me well. Um, Stanley Turrentine, no. Stanley Turrentine, I didn't get paid very well. And that was always an issue. And you know what? One time I said to Stanley, hey, Stanley, I think we should get paid more. And from that day on, he called me the squeeze. He said, hey, man, what are you trying to do? Squeeze me? And that was what I was called.
Well, good. I'm going to add that to my vocabulary.
Squeeze.
The squeeze.
Yes.
I noticed you've done some arranging, Slide Hampton and other
Yep.
people. Did you make a transition from using pencil and paper to using Finale or Sibelius or?
At one time I used Sibelius. I don't anymore. Now it's by hand. I gave that up, and I find it's fine.
Okay.
I get people who use Finale and Sibelius, but I don't now. It's just all handwritten, and I
So
try to make it really readable, and it seems to have worked.
do you think you have a accurate perception in your head what one of your arrangements is going to sound like before it gets played?
I do. I do. I mean, usually when I come up with an arrangement, I have something very clear in my mind what it's going to sound like, and I worked at that.
Yeah, there's nothing like that feeling of working hard on a chart and the first time you hear it back played by live instruments, you know.
Yeah,
Usually it's a
it's a good.
wonderful feeling.
It's really a good feeling, and you know, on my very first record on this Rhythm Vision, that's when I first got into arranging, and I had a bunch of horns on that record, and I remember when I got it played and it turned out really well. I went, wow, this is great. And from that day on, that's been a big part of what I do.
Mhm.
And actually, I'd like to do another record that has a bunch of horns and do more of that.
Mhm. I imagine, like most working musicians, you have a list of players, and you have your first choices and your second choices on every instrument. And
I do.
yeah,
That's very important.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, usually I use Jay Anderson on bass. I'm very comfortable playing with Jay. And drummers, that's a little different because I've worked with Matt Wilson a bunch, but I've also worked with Adam Nussbaum a bunch. And so, I've used Adam when I've gone on tour. And so, yeah, I have several musicians that I picked. And as far as tenor players or something like that, that's the same thing. I've used Benny Maupin, um, and he's great. I'm still in touch with Benny. Um,
Is he a New York person?
L.A.
I see.
Yeah, he lives in L.A. And but he's come to New York, and I've met him here, and we've talked about things,
Yeah,
actually doing things again.
I see.
Because I've always liked this playing. Benny Maupin, it's great.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as for you, like, oh, I can't get this bass player I want, but you got the drummer you want, but then the bass player you can get doesn't work well with the drummer you got.
That could be.
Does that happen?
Yeah, that could be sometimes. Yeah, but not often does that happen.
You mostly, my observation is that you mostly work with pros.
Absolutely. uh, you, I can work with nobody less than pros. They have to be pros, and that's who I work with. That's about it.
Hmm. Can you recall ever playing a gig or a recording session that was just a real train wreck?
Wow, I'd have to think about that one, because usually that hasn't come up.
That's good.
Yeah,
Most,
usually like what I'll do is get the music ahead of time to these guys, and so that they have a little time to get into the music.
Mhm. Do you recall where I'm going back again to your college days? Did your parents um, support your fascination with jazz?
No, absolutely not. But you know what? Once I played Carnegie Hall and they came, that was when they changed. They said he must be good with a musician. He's playing at Carnegie Hall. So, I mean, it all fell into place. I was lucky.
That's nice. Did you have a sense of what it meant to make it in the music business? When you were 22, did you have specific goals, or like most of us, were you just sort of like taking what comes and try to be prepared?
No, I mean, like, before I got my first record date, um, I knew what I had to be doing, and worked at that. Um, so I just always knew what you had to do. You know, you had to work very hard at this thing, and I still work hard at it. I'm still doing it, because what I used to do is do a lot of transcribing of solos. I haven't done it in a while, but I put in my work doing that.
Okay.
And not only piano players, horn players, different people.
Yeah.
But
I, s-
transcribing, it made it easier for me.
I see LPs behind you, and
Yep.
I have my share. Do you ever um, indulge your memories of those LPs and take them into a class and say, look, students, you see this?
Oh, yeah.
This is how I
Well, yeah,
learn.
that's right. I mean, I don't take the records into school, but now it's Spotify, or something, and I say, if you want to learn this tune, check out the various recordings of this tune on Spotify
Hmm.
and really listen to them and see what you could do.
Anything surprise you about the current jazz students that you didn't expect?
You know what? They're playing their butts off. I mean, this group that I have with Sonny Rollins, man, I mean, the level that there's two tenor players in this band, piano, bass, and drums. They're all playing so well. And I tell them that, you know, they're really, I mean, when I was that age, I don't know if I was playing that well,
Hmm.
you know, um, the way whatever they're doing, they're doing something right because and when they get into the real world, they're going to be ready. And I try to encourage that. I didn't have teachers who were like that. I didn't have teachers that encouraged me, you know, just said, do what you do, whatever, But I tell my students, especially this band,
Hmm.
that they're great. I don't want them to get big heads, but they're doing something right and it should be encouraged.
That's very, very hopeful. I'm gonna wrap up soon. I know you have other commitments. Do you
Okay.
do you feel how do I put this? Does music have the power to change people's minds in a positive way?
Definitely. It really does change people's minds in a positive way. And it certainly has done that for me. Um, so it's a great thing.
When you're at Smalls tonight,
Yeah.
I hope that the audience hears things in your original compositions that you heard.
Uh-huh. I hope so too. Yeah, I think they will. I really think they will.
Okay.
I mean, because there's something I think in my music that appeals to people. Whatever it is, it's I think the lyrical side of my music, and that has something to do with it.
Yeah. I've always, for myself, I make it's not a judgment, it's an observation almost, that when a song is over, if I can sing the melody back to myself,
Mhm.
that's important to me.
It is.
Yeah,
It is. And I think I think they'd be able to sing the melodies.
good.
Yeah.
I
Um,
just had my students, my sax students, learn Sonny Rollins tune by ear. It's a little more current, like it's called Island Lady,
okay. Yeah.
and it's so hooky that
Yep.
now I can't get it out of my head.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I mean, with Sonny Rollins' music, definitely hooky, because I mean, a lot of his music, it's really like dance music,
Hmm.
and calypso is basically dance music,
Yeah. Okay.
and that's what I tell my students.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you the best of continued success.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a link with this?
Yes, we will put this on our YouTube channel,
Uh-huh.
and I think you'll be happy.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
sure I will be.
Good. Excellent. I'll sign off and then we'll say our goodbyes.
Okay, Monk. Nice meeting you. Nice taking part in this. It's really been great. You've come up with some good questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great.